Want to hear this Valentinus dude talk crap for 30 minutes straight? Meh, I didn't really want to either, but being a mathematician, I just had to pull him up on a few things that he said. I'll just point out here that he didn't even have his face on the screen, but he was just some jaws going flappity flap 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 to Pleven's 200 viewers. He had no receipts. If you've been watching Aiden's channel or his ex posts, he's shown us all the receipts. We know what Matt Valentinus said to Aiden, and we know what Aiden said to him because we saw it all posted, and we're supposed to take this guy's word for it over the actual receipts. What Matt was doing was pretty transparent. He went to the cottage cheese guy to stab Aiden in the eyeball. I mean, who, with any credibility, goes to a channel with these titles and these thumbnails and an audience with the attention span of a freaking goldfish? I got way more to say, but let's just listen to him for a bit.
Shit, hold on a second. Matt, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, I hear you now, loud and clear. Very good. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Matt.
Yeah, pleasure meeting you. This was kind of funny. The technology,
Yeah,
2024.
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Listen, Boomer. YouTube livestream has been happening since November 2008. This is not new technology, but please go ahead, because later on you're going to lecture us about narrative podcasts, as if we've never heard of that before.
So, do you want to respond to, well, you can talk about whatever you want, but do you want to respond to anything that I said, or do you feel it was fair, unfair? Go ahead. Anything you want to talk about?
I guess, well, you kept calling it a partnership. The agreement with Turtle Boy is not a partnership. It's basically just a licensing agreement. He has no creative or editorial control, no say in the matter whatsoever about anything.
Okay.
So
I should qualify that. I didn't mean in the legal sense of a partnership. I just meant in kind of the.
Just take the L, Pleven. You don't really have any idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, so just to be clear, I'm not his attorney. I never was. When I did first reach out to him a long time ago, it was through my attorney email, and he told me, and I explained to him what I do. I can be your attorney, or I could be your manager. Because at the time, first time I spoke to him, he said he already had a deal. So I was like, oh, it's too bad. I guess I missed it. But then he's like, I'm going to need a lawyer. And you sound like you know what you're doing, so maybe you can look over my deal. So I had him send me his deal, his original deal that he had. And I sort of explained the terms to him, and frankly was able to get him out of that deal.
Which deal are you talking about? This one here, where you're just reading over the agreement and telling him he's good to go with doing a podcast or a book? Is that the deal you got him out of?
But before I did, I told him, do you want me to be your lawyer or do you want me to be your manager? And I explained both. We had 2 phone calls about it. He signed a management agreement, which is a 5-page document. Mm-hmm. And, within that document, it says, I am clearly not your attorney. I'm just representing you as a manager.
Right.
And I believe I did tell him on the phone to have an attorney look these things over. Mm-hmm. So, of course, he either doesn't remember or he purposely is leaving those things out. I'm seeing a lot of people on the internet, thinking I was his lawyer and there's some conflict of interest. There's our.
Oh, here we go. You're blaming Turtle Boy for the things that people on the internet are saying. Get in the queue, buddy.
No conflict of interest clause, because obviously managers and agents represent multiple clients who are going out for multiple projects, and sometimes they're in the same project, like in this situation. So that's standard in the entertainment industry.
Do you have a official business relationship with Matt Phelps? Like, are you his manager or any other?
Yeah, I'm Phelps' manager as well. Correct.
Manager. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And And you're saying there's obviously nothing unusual about that. That's what I'm thinking, anyways. But you're managing different interests, and in this case, you're bringing them together to work on the same project. And
Yeah, exactly. So
yep,
I've always, I always track everybody in the New England area. So, I mean, I had been tracking Turtle Boy for a while. And I think the first time I came across Turtle Boy was he was posting something against, pedophiles. And I had done a documentary in 2014 called An Open Secret, which was it's free on Vimeo now, but it was really the first documentary in Hollywood that kind of preceded Me Too, but I'd like to think we sort of started. I don't want to say we started Me Too, but we were sort of the first. If you've seen the last 2 or 3 years, all these movies about children being molested in Hollywood have started to come out, these documentaries. We were
yeah,
really the first one to do that.
Dude, I don't know if you noticed this, but the Me Too movement's taken a big dive lately. You can thank Amber Heard for that.
So, anyways, that's how I discovered Turtle Boy.
mhm,
But I mean, I wouldn't call myself a everyday reader or even a periodical reader. Just once in a blue moon,
right,
I would sort of read his stuff. I never really watched his shows or that type of thing.
right,
So I wouldn't call myself a turtle rider per se.
right.
Um, but I did know who he was.
Clearly, you know little about him because that's what he calls the members of his channel. You know, Melanie Little calls hers cupcakes. Emily D. Baker calls hers law nerds. But go ahead, misrepresent it. We know you wanna.
Right. So
And
more it is kind of like what you guys were doing with the pedophilia documentaries. You're bringing to light issues that are not covered very well or at all by the mainstream media, and you're recognizing someone in Turtle Boy as
yeah,
potentially
and I
doing
actually
something
think
similar.
he may, and we may have posted on that account maybe something he wrote, and he may have reached out to us too. I think he may have reached out to my partner who produced it.
I think a language analyst would call that distancing. Oh yeah, he reached out to us. We didn't reach out to him. Problem is, we got receipts, buddy. You reached out to him a number of times before he actually answered you.
And maybe that's even how the first time I sort of found out about him, because I was like, oh, this guy's in the Boston area, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so that's sort of how I came about knowing him.
As a
Um,
manager, what are your responsibilities to Turtle Boy? Uh,
well, what I did for him, I mean, I can tell you, he's going to tell you he already knew. I think he had already met the people at Compelling, but I basically got him his deal. I got him out of his deal with HBO that had expired and wasn't going anywhere.
From my own education in contractual law, if the parties do not renew or extend the expired contract, it's considered to be terminated, and the rights and obligations of the contract no longer apply. So, what exactly did you do again?
And I got him an amazing deal with a company called Compelling Pictures for documentary and film and television rights for drama and documentary. Um, and even, you know, I think Turtle Boy will admit I got him a great deal. I think he's probably spoken with that company and they've told him I got them a great deal. So I don't even think he will deny that.
So, with the company that he'd already approached and already spoken with, you did what now?
And with that, I reserved the rights to do a podcast just because the way I like to set things up are sometimes things can just take forever in development. So those other projects are actually, they are moving along at a swift pace, but
mhm,
Hollywood, your project can be hot one day and then
yeah.
dead the next. And I
Yeah.
knew with a podcast, we could at least have some control over kind of the timeline on getting that information out.
Well, that's a bit of word salad. So you stepped in to manage a deal that he was already managing and wrote up a new deal, including yourself in that deal, effectively taking that management deal away from Turtle Boy. because you needed the information out there sooner. Which information? Are you talking about the McAlbert's PR campaign to turn the public support against Karen Read? Is that what you needed out there pronto?
And that's something that we could do within the immediate year, like we have. So that's why I reserved the podcast rights, and that's why I sort of explained to Turtle Boy how that could work to our benefit, and it also could help promote the other materials. And then we were also considering doing a book.
Now, I think that the nut of it, Matt, is Turtle Boy would say that it was in the best interest financially of this project to stay on the side of the conspiracy. And I don't think that he was angry for the financial reasons, but he could make that argument that you guys were going in the wrong business best interest by questioning the conspiracy.
I certainly understand that. And we had several conversations about that.
Let me start by saying that Aidan was exactly right. The audience, not necessarily his audience, but worldwide audience, had been polled multiple times during the trial by many channels far larger than Aidan's channel, like, for example, Lawyer You Know, who's at almost 500,000 subs, and Emily D. Baker, who's nearing 750,000 subs, as well as multiple other large channels like Law and Crime Network and Court TV. And those polls were telling us that 95% of the entire freaking world felt that the evidence was not adding up to guilty. So tell me, was your objective to tap into this business that was already there by 95%, and in some cases 98%, or was your objective to run a PR campaign to change everybody's minds? From your own messages, we can see you are counting on at least 40 to 50,000 of Aidan's followers to tune in to your podcast. But Phelps had already appeared on Aidan's channel and put at least 90% of his audience offside by being a pompous douchebag. So how was he supposed to do what none of you guys could do and convince his audience to go look at your podcast? And then right after that disaster, Aidan's audience went over to Phelps' X account and discovered that he's following all of the anti-Karen Read crowd. Which, let's face it, it's just the food stamp 5 with 10 accounts each. But despite all of these hurdles, you're still saying, our goal is money, not an Oscar or a Pulitzer. This is a podcast, not a presidential campaign. Who are these people that are concerned, and what are they concerned about? Well, I can tell you in a nutshell, they're worried that you're going to be doing a PR campaign for the McAlberts to turn the public opinion away from Karen Read. You're not very good at this reading the room and adding up the stats stuff, are you?
But what I explained to him, and I think if you listen to the podcast as it finishes out, and people have to realize this is a narrative podcast, so there's still a lot that hasn't been said, and there's going to be a lot of answers that will be answered.
Dude, this is where Phelps fell apart, calling the audience dummies like we don't know what a freaking podcast is. How do you think Brandy Churchwell got to the top 0.5% in the world? I'll give you a hint, it's not because we're too dumb to understand what a narrative podcast is.
But we didn't go into this like I know Turtle Boy's thinking we went in and we kind of bamboozled him or swindled him. I originally came to this thinking, just like everybody else did, that Karen Read was innocent.
Bookmark this, because if you believe that Karen Read is innocent, then you must also believe that somebody else killed John O'Keefe. He is shortly going to word salad back around to saying that he doesn't believe the conspiracy. And what's the conspiracy? That somebody else killed John O'Keefe.
And that's kind of what drew me to this. It was more so, I mean, you need something unique. There's a million cases that we could have done, but what was unique to this was sort of the social media aspect around it.
You mean the public support, right?
and sort of the incompetence, I guess you could say, of the Mass State Police, and probably Adam Lally's just, well, I mean, I guess that came later, the terrible prosecution that he did.
I half expected Pleven's jaw to hit the floor because remember, he loved Lally's prosecution. In fact, he loved it so much that he even wrote the closing for him.
But, there was a lot of interesting factors that attracted me to it. So I originally came in with thinking she was innocent. And then the reason why I set him up with Matt Phelps, because later he told me, he's like, Matt, you weren't looking out for my interests because, Phelps turned, or he thinks Phelps turned and he went in the other direction, and you should have gotten me somebody else.
Right, so after he realised Phelps was doing a PR campaign for the McAlberts, after the recordings are done and it's already online, you want us to believe he wanted to scratch everything and start over with somebody else. Are you even listening to yourself? He signed a contract to do it with Phelps. How can he start over with somebody else?
And to be quite honest, I don't think anyone else would have taken Turtle Boy. The reason I was able to get Phelps is because I do have such a long-standing relationship with him, and because he has his own, like he works with podcast networks, but he also has his own independent network. So if I had tried to pitch Turtle Boy to somebody like Apple or Wondery or iHeart, I think they just would have they would have looked at the liability. Okay, and they would have probably, I'd say there's a 95% chance there's no way in hell they would have done anything with him. So
plus you got by attaching Matt, you have the long-term credibility and history that goes with that, which makes it a lot more easier to get somebody like an Apple to attach to it, right?
Well, exactly. So while Turtle thinks it was like an easy thing for me to attach Matt, first of all, I had to sort of convince Matt to do it.
Look, dude, you just told us it was all your idea. That you reached out to Turtle Boy and told him about Matt.
And second of all, it's not easy because Turtle Boy doesn't really understand how hard it is to really put together a podcast. He thinks that what he doesn't realize is how much Phelps actually did his own research, and how much Phelps researched on his own, and how much material he has.
You could have fooled us. If he was so up to date on his research, how did he not know that Aiden had no more contact with Karen after he got tossed in jail and both their phones got seized? How did he not know that Aiden had no contact with the O'Keefes, other than being abused and threatened by them? And how did he not know that Natalie the German was a witness against Aiden? The only way Phelps didn't know that there was a 3,000 plus TUI report handed over by the feds is if he didn't do his research and he didn't watch the pre-trial motions.
So when Phelps is asking Turtle Boy for information, a lot of the time most of the time, it's not because he doesn't already have it. It's because he wants Turtle Boy to sort of, he wants Turtle Boy to give him his
sources, contacts, any defense evidence that he had and hadn't published, which might screw up Karen's defense if you got a hold of it.
The way that Turtle Boy sort of saw things. Like, we didn't go into this thinking that there was a conspiracy. That word didn't.
And there he goes with the 360. If you came into this thinking Karen Read was innocent, then the obvious conclusion is somebody else killed him. That's the conspiracy, is it not?
I'd say that comes after. We went into this thinking, okay, Turtle Boy has some inside information, and he's sort of going to explain his direction to it. But Phelps is also going to do his own investigating. Phelps is going to look for the truth. That's what he always does. And unfortunately, what happened is what Phelps found kind of goes in an opposite direction from what Turtle Boy was giving us.
Actually, what Phelps found was Jen, the soccer mum, because he's such a super good investigative journalist. And what Turtle Boy found was the plough driver, all the connections between the EMTs and the owner of the house, and all the connections between the owner of the house and all the cops. Hell, he even found Scanlon. I could go on, but you get the picture.
And I still tried to work with Turtle Boy and explain to him, this podcast is going to be both sides. And, at any time he could have given us more solid information than everything else that he's just said. And unfortunately, I think the way Phelps felt about a lot of what Turtle Boy thinks is evidence is really more just opinion or speculation.
Uh-huh. Whatever you reckon, Flappy Jaw with no receipts. It's around about here in the conversation where I realised Phelps wanted Karen's evidence. He wanted everything the defence had given to Turtle Boy. And thankfully, Aiden was smart enough to hold some stuff back. Stuff that you and I don't want to see because we know it's going to help Karen. We're not pissed. Valentinus and Phelps are pissed. If I had to guess, and I am only guessing incidentally, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to find out that the mushy queen Gretchen Boss somehow knows this guy and sent him out to get information from Aiden.
Right, or is something
or distorted things put out by the defense in a distorted way,
right, or things that were clearly provided directly from Karen herself, right? Yeah. That couldn't be verified through other ways.
Right.
So, Turtle Boy doesn't want to hear that. Turtle Boy wants full loyalty, and he wants you to just believe what he says, and that's it. And that's not really the way that these things work. And he wasn't able to grasp that.
From what I understand of everything that Aiden said before the podcast was released, is that he wasn't expecting full loyalty. He was expecting both sides of the story to be told. That's precisely what you just finished saying yourself, that you would tell both sides of the story. Not that Jen, the soccer mum, is so truthful that the rest of the world didn't believe her, while Karen Reed's a psychopath. We all know that if that's what you told Aiden, there's no way he was playing ball.
Yeah, I mean, he basically, put his whole entire summer into this, because we have a pretty busy schedule coming up for next year. So we sort of he had to get this done. And it would have been a lot better if we had more cooperation from Turtle Boy. But I think his opinion on the whole thing was like, I've already said everything you need to know. Just go look at my website, and then I'm all, he did sit down with us sit down with Matt for a few interviews. And, he did provide him with a few guests. But normally when we work with other people, they provide us with like entire archives of information. When you're selling something to a network, it's not just they want to see who the talent is, but they also want to see like, entire court transcripts and photographs and all the stuff that's been written in the newspapers and all the video and audio you have and all the notes that you might have, any attorney work product that you can provide. It's pretty extensive. So
you did want all his sources and all his information and anything that the defense team had given him. You already had access to his entire website and all his YouTube videos were all transcribed, but you wanted the other stuff that he hadn't released to the public yet, that is most likely detrimental to Karen's case. You wanted to know where the defense was going.
I just don't think that Turtle Boy really wanted to put in the effort with that.
What do you say to Turtle Boy's claim that Phelps turned on him and he listed these weird reasons, like because he didn't have access to Karen or he didn't have access to the jurors?
No, that's absolutely 100% untrue. And I think that might be something that think the first time I heard that story came from his girlfriend Meredith. But maybe that's an excuse he can use for starting to talk about Phelps and sort
He's
of
got,
insult Phelps and sort of
yeah.
incite his followers the way he did. And
Because
even through. Go
the
ahead.
last thing he can say, Matt, is that, well, no, Phelps just didn't buy into the evidence. He can't say that. So he didn't look at the evidence and come up with the same
No, and
conclusion
he
about the
also, I heard
conspiracy.
him also say, like, look, Phelps was mad at me because I didn't give him enough information. Phelps already had most of the information he needed by the first time he sat down with Turtle.
Right. So yous were giving him 40% for what? Out of the goodness of your heart? Like, seriously, dude. You really think we're all stupid?
Right.
So that's Phelps is a professional, and I think maybe Turtle doesn't appreciate that or underestimates that. Or if he had cooperated with us more, I think this would have. I don't understand why he had to take such. I mean, I understand that his followers are mad at him, but his followers will do whatever they tell him.
Listen, Linda. Most of Aiden's followers listened to Phelps and thought he was a douchebag. Aiden begged them to go and look at this podcast, if for no other reason than just to support him. And a very small percentage listened, probably less than 5%. Everyone else was still under the impression that Phelps was a douchebag. Do you know why? Because that's the way he behaved on Aiden's live stream. Just like you're behaving on this live stream, where you're about to tell us yet again that we don't know what a podcast is.
Anyways, and he could explain to them that, like, I understand. Really, in the short term, maybe that I don't even buy into the fact that we'd make more money doing it the way he wanted to do it, with just constantly repeating that Karen Reed is innocent.
Right.
Because I think in the long term, this is going to pay off differently.
Uh-huh. That's why Brandy Churchill's 13th juror is currently ranked at 0.5% of the top global ranking. She's not constantly repeating that Karen Reed is innocent, and he has participated in Brandy's podcast for free.
Mm-hmm.
And this is more of a long-term project, and it's also, I think a lot of his audience doesn't understand what a narrative podcast is. A narrative podcast is like a series where it's not really complete until you listen to it all. And I think they think like every episode is just like a weekly episode of Phelps giving his opinion on things. But it
So
actually,
you're gonna have these twists and turns and ups and downs and
yeah, and
great
most people like to binge these things, and I think that's how most of this the largest audience of this will hear it after the final episode has come out.
Right.
And to be quite honest, without really giving anything away, I think we could make the argument that if anyone misled anybody about this case, Turtle Boy misled us about this case.
Well, if you were trying to give both sides of the story, then you wouldn't see it as misleading but Karen's side of the story. That's all Turtle Boy expected, that's all we expected. And Brandy's currently ranking in the top 0.5% because she's presenting both sides well. And yours is bottomed out because you're not.
Oh, I also think that Turtle had access to information that maybe he wasn't sharing with his audience that he knows about things that he potentially, he lied about. So,
of course he does, you flippin' moron. And that's what this is all about, isn't it? You didn't get the information that you were tasked to obtain. You failed your mission, Agent Valentina. And who are you gonna blame? Turtle Boy. Surprise, surprise.
We've caught him in many. We have many. He seems to think that Phelps is lying about him. We actually have him lying on several things on tape, in his own words.
Yeah.
And everything that Phelps puts out there is either factual or in Turtle's own words. And this wasn't, we weren't looking to ambush Turtle at all.
So, let me get this straight. You want all these sources, all his material, anything the defence has given him, recordings of all his interviews he's ever taken, including the much coveted Scanlon, and then you introduce him like this.
Aiden is a muckraker type of online journalist. Think of Turtle Boy, not Aiden Carney, as a hybrid of gonzo journalist Hunter S. Thompson, Julian Assange, and Jerry Springer.
What do you call that if not an ambush?
Of course, if Turtle had given us information that was, we could factually prove that Karen Reed is innocent, great. We don't want to be the subject of all this ridiculous harassment that we're getting online right now.
Oh, well, here's an idea. How about you stop being a pair of douchebags and calling everyone stupid? The boomer, who's never been on a live stream before, assumes all of us don't even know what a narrative podcast is. I mean, you both come out the gate sideways at us. First, Phelps on Aiden's channel, and now you on Plevin's channel. And then you completely trash Aiden on your podcast, i.e. you came at him sideways first. And you wonder why Aiden can't get the audience to like you.
Right.
And of course, my goal has always been to make money. This is really, at the end of the day, I mean, of course, there's, and really the difference, what I mean, and I think that the main difference here is.
Yes, of course, money's the objective. We all gotta eat, mate, including Aiden. The bottom line is, the reason you didn't get the 90% audience who believes Karen Reed's innocent is because you were unable to put across both sides of the story. Both sides was going to be a win-win. Then Aiden would have been happy, and you guys would have been happy, and then the crowds would have been happy. But oh wait, you weren't looking to make anybody happy, were you? You were told, get the defence's info from Aiden, and you failed to do so. Thank you for doing a live stream with Plevin, because now we know exactly where you're coming from.